So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and joining me for Coffee Conversations with Trace Indy. I'm really excited. Today, Andrea Watts, City of Indianapolis. I'm so pumped. So let me give the laundry list because you're kind of amazing. So Andrea is the Chief Communications Officer for the City of Indianapolis. She's been with Indy Parks, WFYI, the Ohio Democratic Party. You're on the board for Fletcher Place Neighborhood Association. You've been on the board for lots of things. Thanks so much for taking the time. You busy?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Honored and humbled. Yay.
Oh, I love you. First, can we give a little shout out to your rainbow bookshelf?
Yes, thank you.
That is so cute.
Before the home edit. I know everyone thinks it's the home edit, but I've been doing this since like 2012. So just wanted to throw that.
OG rainbow bookshelf. I love it. I also want to give a little shout out today. Allie Brettnacher, who is on the show from Athletic Bouquets, also made me a mug. Maybe one of these days we'll find a sponsor and I'll give a mug to all the guests one day.
I went to high school with Allie.
She's an amazing human, also birthed another human.
Yeah.
I love what she does. Everyone check that conversation because Allie's amazing too. So that's a lot of what you do. I mean, you work for the city that I live in. So tell everyone, what does it mean to be a chief communications officer? And then I kind of would love to hear why Indy, like I will say, everyone who doesn't follow you on Twitter, you love this city and you're just all over the place and it's so fun. I learned about new coffee shops from you. Anyway, I want to let you talk, but share some of that with us because it's really fun.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Indianapolis. I would say I have a very special passion for this city. And I think that definitely translates in my work. So I do public relations and communications for the Department of Metropolitan Development. That is a freaking mouthful. They do planning, zoning, historic preservation, which is really fun and kind of nerdy and exciting to speak out about. Real estate and economic development and long-term planning of the city as well. So that's really fun stuff to think about, like the White River Vision Plan or the Indy Moves Transportation Plan. So that's I work with a lot of city planners who are extremely technical. So that's been a learning the jargon and learning all of the words that they use, sort of almost at an academic level. But it's been fun. I've been with the city for 5 years. So yeah, it's been a good ride so far. It's definitely challenging, but on the other side of the coin, it's really rewarding too.
So in 5 years being with the city, that's a lot of change, So and we're going to talk about other things too, but I got you. So I'm curious, what has been a favorite thing that you found different now than say when you started with the city? That you really love? You're like, this is the coolest thing. I'm so impressed that we're doing this right now as a city.
As a city, I would say the way that the arts and cultural community kind of shows up. So a recent example is, of course, the March Madness tournament and seeing the live music pop up and thinking about how hard of a year we had with COVID and that sort of just being a beautiful bright spot that our city could host this giant tournament, all of the teams, women and men's in the city of Indianapolis and other spots throughout Indiana, but just seeing the way that the nonprofit community, so like the Lilly Endowments of the world, and then the way that like the Indianapolis Arts Council and the city sort of all work together and the cultural trail as well, to make these incredible things happen. An older example would be before I worked for the city, it was a Super Bowl. So thinking about how they turned Old City Hall into like an art exhibit or an art museum almost, and how the city kind of transformed for the Super Bowl. So I find that to be really impressive and exciting and definitely something to be proud of.
So what does it mean to be, a chief communication officer? So what is that day for you, or I don't know, a blank week for you?
Yeah, I would say it's fielding all of the media requests. So that's getting text from the Indianapolis Business Journal saying, can I get a sit down interview with the director? Or it's dealing with something that's blowing up on Twitter. People love to yell at the city about like all caps, like angry, like what's going on here and tagging us. So it's kind of like putting out those little fires as well. There's a really funny Leslie Note quote that I had like framed in my office, and it says, I don't hear people yelling at me. I hear people caring loudly at me. And I love that, because I like any time that I've ever been yelled at, even if it feels like maybe some misplaced anger, I'm just like, hey, they just care. They care about the city and they want us to do the best. And so do I. So it's, I would say, yeah.
Well, not to open you up to DMs, but I will say you are so gracious when I'm like, what is in my yard? Why are there flags? What is happening in my yard?
Did we figure that out? Was it citizens or IPL or something? Or?
I think it was a citizens thing, and I have a nice big metal plate, but there's still like flags and like spray paint my yard, but it's fine.
I feel like sometimes I'm like a private investigator. Like I will email everyone I know in every department being like, let's get to the bottom of this, guys. What's happening? Who's pulled permits out? What do we have going on? So there's, I would say, and you know Mark Williams as well, Mr. Kinetic. He reached out to me like, how can we get a street renamed for one of my friends who passed away? And I was, it's actually like an insanely like, not red tapey process, but it is not an easy process. But I do have like this PDF of like how many years you have to wait, how you put it through the city council, how you have to get it okayed with like neighbors that are like within a certain proximity of the street. Like there's all of these steps. But I kind of laughed and I was like, I feel like I'm like a city service concierge most days.
Yes.
I can't do that, but let me point you in the right direction and tell you who you can complain to that your trash didn't get picked up, or we can talk about recycling, or we can talk about, like, I will say that I'm always like for my friends and for people that I really care about, I'm here for that. But for if they want to be like nice about it, that like precursor. But I do like to at least point people in the right direction and let them know like, hey, this is what's up.
Yeah. Not too much. You totally do. I think I might have actually reached out about a trash thing too. Man, I'm a high maintenance neighbor, but I did get the right number. And I will say, anyone in Indianapolis, if you call the mayor's action line about whether it's city pickup or anything, those women that work there are true treasures of this city and absolutely amazing. Okay, so so you grew up in Indy. How did you get from, like school or growing up and you're like, to a place of service for the community as a whole in the city? How'd you get there?
So I started off at the Indiana State House. After that little stint, I went to work on Ohio's governor race, which was got a taste of the campaign life. Never want to go back to that. I do like working for government. And I realize that you do have to elect people to government to like kind of work for them. But that was tough. I did not want to go back to campaigns after that. WFYI for about 2 years. And then a girl that I was in book club with like 9 years ago reached out to me. She's a deputy mayor now and said, hey, there's an opening with the Parks Department. Are you interested? And I'm kind of like already just a pretty civic minded person. And I just jumped at it. And then now like 5 years later to think that like book club, like a zillion years ago is what, it's just funny to think about like our networks and like the impressions you leave in people. And then like that can maybe translate to a job or a career. Just like, you never know who you're going to,
100%. I think that's also the beauty of Indiana, or at least Indianapolis. I mean,
for sure.
I would say never. So the former deputy mayor is a good friend and someone that I text with, but never in a bigger city would I be like, oh, I'm going to grab drinks with the deputy mayor. Like that just doesn't happen in bigger cities. And I think that's a beautiful thing in Indy, that you are truly neighbors and are just a few degrees of separation.
For sure. Just like
from
approachable people that you're.
yes.
Yeah.
And I will also say, also to anyone's listening, join things, right? Like a book club or nonprofit. I will say almost every single job that I've gotten in this city since moving here in '01 is probably through someone I met doing nonprofit work. Because I think there is something beautiful about showing up for things that you care about when you're not getting paid, that people are like, oh, that resonated with me, or things like that. Again, this city is great for those connections. You know, when you do things that you really like. And I love that. So, it's been a year. Yeah. You know, especially working in city government. Where have you found, and let's bookend it, right? I think I've started doing that where I like it better. I don't want to just go down. I ask my kid every day at the end of the day, tangent, tell me your worst and best part of your day. Right. Because I kind of like that. I want him to be able to vent that out and what's he having a hard time, but we always got to end it on a high note. So I think that's why I love bookending them now.
Yeah.
Where have you found some struggle? Where have you found that delight?
Ooh. I would say, and we already talked about this earlier, but the struggle is like people blaming the city for every problem, even if it's not the city's problem, it's still your problem. That is extremely frustrating, but you know, at the end of the day, I know that we're just, our team is a team of dedicated public servants that want to do things the best way we know how to do. And we're, you know, that's a learning process too, and learning what to do and what not to do. So that's a little frustrating and exhausting. I would say a joy. And especially, I think this really was evident during the pandemic is like, our parks and our green spaces and our trail system is just in the cultural trail, just thinking about our public amenities and how important those things are. Indy Parks just released their like concert, summer movies and concert schedules.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And most of them are free. And it's a super exciting time to just, I've missed live music. I'm sure you've missed music. You know, it's just like, that is so exciting to think like, hey, this summer's going to be fun.
Yeah. And I love that too. I did look at that list and it's really fantastic as someone who lives by Eagle Creek. I mean, the idea of having jazz at the beach sounds just so lovely at the end of the day. So really, really excited about that and what's coming out. And also shout out to Indy Parks, how they handled the pools and the timing and everything during the pandemic was really nice, really nice. Okay. So these are my favorite last two questions. You know, how can the community show up? And whether that's in terms of the city, civically, something that's just weighing on your heart, you know, how can the community show up?
I would say, like we talked about earlier, getting involved in like a civic way. Maybe that's even as something as simple as just voting, just caring about who we elect into our higher offices and like thinking like even those small elections, if it's like an unsexy year that's not presidential, like you're electing the people that will be on your school board, you're electing the people that will be making decisions about your city. I think that's really important. You know, it could be as simple as like joining your neighborhood group for a cleanup or, you know, helping a nonprofit organization that, you know, is improving the city. I think that like that sort of civic stuff is really what makes Indianapolis special and what makes it better at the end of the day.
Am I allowed to ask some of your favorites for those? Or is that like saying your favorite children? Are you not allowed to say that?
No, you're fine. I feel like I could say I served on the Cultural Trail Board for 3 years and I loved it. And I was, it was the Young Professionals Board. So it's a bunch of people in their like 20s and 30s, but just people that really care about that. It's because it's technically, you know, the cultural trail is the public right away. So it's like city owned, but it's, you know, maintained through like non-for-profit, in like sort of endowments and philanthropy. And so like a lot of that money and fundraising is like really vital to having the snow cleared off of it and making it, you know, a nice, so I would say that's one of my favorites. Let's see, I'll just say that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's safe. Okay. So you do a lot. for us, you field crazy calls from neighbors like me. So how at the end of the day, and you could have a lifelong, career in government, in city government or beyond, but how do you want to leave your trace?
So there is a saying on a bench that's in a park between Fletcher Place and Fountain Square. It's called the Idol.
Yes.
And on the bench, it says, leaving things better than you found it. And I'm not sure if it's like a Jesuit saying or where it came from, but I think about that a lot. So I feel like I want my trace on Indy to be leaving it better than yesterday, or leaving it better than you found it, or feel like, you're making progress in a good, positive way. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me for a quick coffee conversation and a quick little catch up. Thank you,
Thanks
Andrea.
for having me.